Well, hello there, and thank you for coming again to our 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I'm the founder of Identity Protection Planning. And today we have with us Mark. Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and then tell us a little about your company?
Hi, I'm Mark Langford. I'm the principal consultant at Aberfoyle Associates, and I am a CMMC registered practitioner.
All right. And so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about what is the CMMC program and described it a little bit. And then last week, we talked about CUI and how it needs to be identified and marked and handled appropriately. So today, we're going to talk about what the steps are that are required to become CMMC compliant.
Okay. I'm sure everybody's wondering that. And then the big question is, where are we going to start? How do we start this whole thing?
Well, I would suggest a couple of things. First, start with an initial assessment of where you're at. And the first question that you need to address is whether you have the skills, knowledge, experience, and especially bandwidth to tackle a project of this type. Whatever you decide, you probably need to go through a couple of other steps as well during an initial phase. Make sure that you have identified all of the CUI in your organization. Because really the whole CMMC maturity program is all about protecting controlled unclassified information throughout the defense supply chain. I would suggest also do a bit of scoping and boundary setting within your organization. With smaller to mid-sized organizations, the systems that carry CUI would probably include everything within your organization. So it's quite simple. The boundary is your entire network. But for larger organizations, the systems that are generating and storing CUI may be a much smaller subset of the entire organization. So it's important to set the boundary on what systems you're going to be covering in the certification audit, and therefore which systems you need to implement all of the security controls necessary for that CMMC maturity level.
And can you just real quick, can you just explain to people what scope is, just a general kind of, in case that's a new word that they haven't heard before?
Sure. Scoping is taking a look at the and defining what the scope of the project is. So if you have, let's say, 42 different servers in your network, but only 18 of them are involved in defense contractor projects, then you really need to set the scope and boundary of your certification on those servers that are carrying CUI. So scoping is just another way of saying that you are defining the extent of the project.
Yeah, that's good. And then see, it's not everything. You don't have to cover everything. You just have to cover things that are related to CUI. So it makes it a little bit more attainable.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Okay. So did we talk about where do I start? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from there, you need to ascertain what CMMC maturity level is going to be required. There are 5 different maturity levels, 1 through 5. So you need to have a good understanding of what the maturity level is that's being required of you and by when it needs to be, you need to be compliant. And I'll talk a little bit more later about what the security controls are and what the security practices are for each of those levels. But suffice to say that you need to have the end result in mind. And it would be really helpful also if you have completed any of the DFARS submissions previously, so that you can start reviewing your SSP, your POAM, and your SPRS score from your previous submission, because those are good building blocks towards the work that you're going to need to do to prove CMMC compliance.
That's a very good point, because that's what they're already stating. You've already stated that this is stuff you're doing. So that is a good point. Start there. Okay. All right. So then after they do the initial assessment of kind of picturing here was where we are. It's not too good where we are. We know we have a ways to go. What do they do next?
Right. So after the initial assessment, and I'm assuming that you would do some sort of gap analysis of your SSP at the conclusion of your initial assessment, then it's always a good idea to get on board your executive team and the other stakeholders within the organization to review where you're at and to make sure that you want to go forward. So, for example, you may determine after reviewing your initial assessment findings with the executive team that there just isn't enough future business projected with the Department of Defense to warrant going through the process of becoming CMMC compliant. And if that's the case, stop all effort. But in most cases, I think you're going to find it is, and that it's a worthwhile endeavor to go through. So going through that exercise of just getting everybody on board and aligned is a good first step. Now, when I mentioned other stakeholders, there are 17 different domains that are covered in the CMMC maturity levels. Now, these domains, you can consider domains to be like groupings of security controls. In CMMC maturity level 1, there are only 17 controls. But in maturity level 2, there are an additional 55 controls. So now we're up to a total of 72 security controls. In addition, they add a couple of security practices. And those practices, the first two are you have to have a written policy that governs that security control. And you have to have a written procedure that describes how you are going to implement that particular security control. Later on in CMMC maturity level 3, they add an additional 58 controls. Now we're up to 130, and a third security practice. And the third security practice is you have to document a resource plan for how you are going to implement the security control that supports your policy. So laying out that process flow with all of the stakeholders is a good idea, just so that they have an expectation of what it is that they're in for. In addition, back to the domains for a moment, of these 17 domains or groupings of security controls, one of the domains has to do with personnel security. Another domain has to do with physical security, the building and the assets within the building. And it's most likely within an organization that people who are involved in personnel security and physical security are not necessarily the IT department. So some of your interaction is going to go above and beyond your normal contacts within the IT group. Certainly with the executive team, you'll want to confirm scope and boundaries. Mostly though, the review is to get agreement on the timeline that is going to be required, the resources that you're going to need to achieve compliance, and probably the biggest of those resources is a commitment of IT remediation support, because the whole process of working through and documenting compliance with each of the security controls often uncovers controls that you're not compliant with and therefore need to fix.
All right. Well, so let's assume that they have that big meeting and everybody says, okay, yes, it's worthwhile for us to move forward. So how do we get this ball rolling here? When does the hard work begin?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the harder work, but it's certainly the bulk of the work that's involved with becoming CMMC compliant is working through each of the security controls that are required for the maturity level that you're trying to achieve. And for each control, I mentioned it's in a graduated step level, 17 controls in the first level, 72 security controls plus 2 practices in the second level, 130 controls in the third level with an additional practice, all the way up to maturity level 5, which I think is 171 security controls and 5 practices. Maturity levels 4 and 5 are probably only going to impact the top 1% of defense contractors. So for most defense contractors, it's either going to be maturity level 1 or maturity level 3 that you're going to be striving for. Now, when I refer to security controls, a security control might be something like access control. How do you allow access to the building? And so you need to have a documented process that says, for example, we allow access to the building by issuing magnetic strip cards to all of our employees, and that's how they access the building. We log in whenever anybody enters the building or leaves the building. Okay, fine. For each security control, you need to document how you are compliant, or you need to list that this particular security control is not applicable. In other words, some things like allowing employees or users the ability to wirelessly network data. That may be, you may not have a wireless data network within your building. If you don't, then this would be a control that's not applicable. There may be some security controls that you implement in a way that is different from the NIST 800-171 framework. If that's the case, if either it's not applicable or you do it differently, it's a really smart idea to make sure that you document those exceptions and get prior written approval from the CMMC accreditation board ahead of time, so that when the auditor shows up to perform the certification audit, they're not surprised at finding stuff that is not compliant.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea to reach out ahead of time. Because, you know, when these people show up, when the assessors show up, and then let's say it doesn't go well and you fail because of one little thing, now you have to not only, you know, fix whatever they found, you have to reschedule the assessment. And I think these assessors are going to be very, very busy when it comes time to, you know, next year and the year after that, as more and more of these contractors are required for this. So better to get our act together before they show up than to have something like that hanging. So that's a great idea to get it approved beforehand. All right. So then after doing all that, so how do we know when we are ready to call the assessor? How do you know when we're done?
Yeah, I actually included this banner in here as kind of a joke, because if you ask anybody from the Department of Defense, when am I done? They will say you are never done. And there's a lot of truth in this. The entire CMMC program is based on the idea that they're trying to improve the maturity of the security processes in each and every member of the defense supply chain. And a big part of improving that security maturity is having processes that are conducted over time, reassessing, testing, monitoring, retraining your people, especially as you have new employees joining the organization, and so forth. So it's really important to look at this exercise as an ongoing function. It's something that you're going to be living and breathing and implementing forever. It's not a 100-meter dash and then you're done. You know, so with that in mind, this is something that is going to involve kind of a change of the way that organizations conduct themselves, and that's what they're trying to affect. They're trying to bring about that level of change. But I would suggest when you think that you are ready, go through a final review for compliance of all of the controls and processes. You've got to be fully compliant with all of the required security controls. You must be compliant with all of the required security processes. Remember, this is different from the DFARS program in that you are not allowed to self-assess. There's going to be a certified third-party assessor that conducts your accreditation, your certification, audit. And it's different from the DFARS program in that they do not allow you to document exceptions in a POAM. You must be compliant with everything, or note it in advance, as I mentioned earlier, either something is not applicable or you implement it differently. And then finally, when you think you've got everything ready, then contact a certified third-party assessment organization, a C3PAO, and negotiate with them to have a certified third-party assessor come out and perform the audit of your certification audit of all of your documentation. They will look to either test your processes or to interview your people or to examine your evidence in order to determine that you are compliant with all of the security controls. A couple of tips. The certified third-party assessor is not necessarily looking for investment in the latest and greatest tools. What they are looking for is that you have mature, secure, consistent, repeatable processes in place, that you have invested in people, in training, yes, invested in tools, but that you are applying all of these in a cohesive defensive posture that supports the security controls for that CMMC level that you're seeking certification for. And for anyone who is not sure about what has to be done within their organization, or who wants help in achieving certification and preparing for the certification audit, then Dana will provide my email address at the bottom of the screen. I'm happy to help with that process.
Yes, perfect. And that's a very good point, that you don't have to have the new latest and greatest fancy technology. I mean, if you have a visitor log and it's literally just handwritten paper that you can clearly see that everyone has been tracking who's coming in and out of the building, that's going to qualify as a visitor log. It doesn't necessarily have to be a typed up Excel spreadsheet or whatever, kind of thing. So that's a good point. All right. So if you need to get in touch with Mark, if you're looking for some help for some training, send him an email. And also you can send him an email, because for our next video series, we're looking for what does the audience want to learn about. So if you have something you're curious about, you want to know about, you think would be a good idea for us to do a video about, we would love to hear it. So shoot Mark an email, and we will put our little heads together and come up with something, and hopefully it will be a good, helpful video for everybody. So that's Mark's email. And if you need to get in touch with me, there's my email. And if not, we will see you the next time. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Want to say goodbye?
Bye for now.